Today I'm reviewing the Punch Audio Martilo in-ear monitors. We're talking 5 drivers, 2 dual dynamics, dual balanced armatures, and 1 planar magnetic. This is marketed and labeled as a, where is it? Basshead IEM. Is it though? Well, we'll find out. Let's get it. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews. That is the box for the Martilo. Pretty snazzy little box. Look, when I first got asked if I would review this and had a quick look on the shop page on Linsol's website, I saw the first thing I noticed was the font, choice of font, and then it also said, where'd it go? Basshead. And to be honest, I thought these were going to be pretty shit. And I know, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and I shouldn't have, but needless to say, I was very pleasantly surprised when I actually started to listen. But before we talk about the sound, the price of the Martilo, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, is $329 US. So 1 planar, 2 balanced armatures, 2 dynamics. The dynamic drivers take care of the bass, the balanced armatures are in charge of the mid-range, and the planar is for the treble. And inside of the box, you get the IEMs. I'll just put them there for a moment. I'll look at the cable in a sec. I just want to say you also get a pretty decent carrying case, pretty nice, sizable one, heaps of room in there for your IEMs. Not really pocketable, but a nice bit of protection if you want to take your IEMs out and about anywhere. So that's what the shells look like. They've got this kind of cracked lava design on the faceplate. It reminds me of the Thing from the Fantastic Four, Ben Grimm. So they're probably a bit smaller than the sort of current batch of Kiwi Ears and Zigat IEMs that we've been seeing. They're not small, but they're not big either. But they are very comfortable, and I have for several days. I've actually had these for like a month or something, but I've used these all day long more than once, and I find them very comfortable. Let's now have a look at this cable. It's a pretty lovely cable. It's a little bit chunky, so if you don't like chunky cables, you're out of luck, but it is a modular cable, and you can easily swap out between the included 4.4mm and 3.5mm terminations, just like that. And yeah, it's a really nice cable. It handles nicely. It's just really good quality, and it's a great cable to pair up with these IEMs. Okay, now let's talk about the sound. So first of all, there's that elephant in the room. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but you know, it is a basshead IEM, or so they say. But let's have a look at the graph, and that's what it looks like compared to the 2019 Harman IEM Target. So you can see it definitely does have more bass than the Harman, especially in the sub-bass area. It's also got a little less emphasis in the upper mid-range and the lower treble. But I'm going to start with the bass first, so let's get to the meat of it. Considering these are marketed as a basshead IEM, you would expect bombastic, bone-shaking lows, and you do get that on occasion, but not quite in the way that you might expect. Because in truth, this is, the Martilo mainly boosts the lower mids and the sub-bass regions, while the upper bass, which is like around 120 to 250 hertz, that stays pretty close to neutral, as you can see on the graph there, more or less in line with the Harman Target at, in the upper bass region. So basically what that means is that on some recordings, depending on the music genre, but especially older music like pre-90s music, the bass doesn't really hit you with that much force. It comes across, the sound comes across as just balanced. The extra bass impact is much more noticeable with modern music productions and, specific genres, but it doesn't necessarily have to be electronic or hip hop. You'll hear it in most modern music at some point. But what I'm saying, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not bad at all, in fact, because this IEM seems to instinctively dial in just the right amount of bass for each track. It can surprise you now and then with some serious thump and real authority, especially in the low bass. But for the most part, it's just a well-controlled bass that keeps itself in check. Now, I'm just going to say right out, I wouldn't consider this basshead IEM if I were listening to it. Maybe on certain hip-hop tracks or tracks with heaps of synth bass, 808 drums and whatnot, yeah, you'd listen and say, oh, okay, that could be classified as a basshead IEM. But for a lot of music, it just doesn't sound that way. There are other IEMs like the Yanyan Canon Pro, for example, that feels a lot more authoritative in the mid bass. It's got a really good slam and thump, whereas this one is more concentrated in the lowest of the lows. But like I said, that is not a bad thing. It still has more mid bass and upper bass than a lot of Harman target IEMs, and certainly has a lot more mid bass than a lot of what was trending for the last couple of years, the critical tuning type style ones, which I always found a little bit boring, but that is just the personal preference. So it still delivers a nice energetic and rhythmic low end, but I wouldn't necessarily consider it a basshead IEM as such, because in reality, for the most part, it is quite tame and very well controlled. Let's move on to the mid-range now, and the mid-range definitely benefits from that early upper bass roll-off, which is why so many brands are doing it nowadays. So the mid-range sounds nice and clean, mostly neutral, but it does have some deeper undertones in the lower mids, of course, coming from that rich bass, and that adds a bit of natural richness and a bit of extra note weight. Those the mid-range is done, like I said, by the dual Knowles balanced armature drivers. They do a fantastic job. They produce a nice spacious mid-range with good clarity. Of course, because they're balanced armature drivers, you've got nice, fast, crispy transients, and they also have a nice, accurate tone. So male vocals are nicely saturated. They've got plenty of power, and female vocals, they're nice and alluring, but they're still clear. But importantly, never boxy or never harsh, and that is thanks to, again, what I mentioned earlier. Look at that upper mid-range. It's pulled back a little bit from the Harman target, which is an area that gives me and a lot of other people a little bit of issue. Sometimes it can get a bit shouty, but that is handled nicely here by the Martilo. So vocals and instruments have got good density, good note weight, and that is paired with excellent, outstanding even resolution. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So the mids are fully engaging, and at the same time, they are technically impressive. For the treble, look, the treble tuning is really interesting with this one. So it's the planar driver doing the treble duty, and the Martilo's highs are, to my ears at least, smooth as can be, but somehow they are still super crisp, very detailed, really well defined, very speedy, very fast, but the note size is spot on. They've got a nice natural decay. There's plenty of air up there. The treble adds nice clarity to the mid-range. It balances perfectly with that boosted bass, even the boosted sub-bass. So you get that super smooth treble, perfectly balances the bass out. It's completely free of sibilance. It's not brittle in any way, even though it does have a noticeable lift in the upper treble registers. So you can see on the graph there, like after 10K or 10 kilohertz, you can see there's still plenty of action going on, and then it tapers off. So despite having that extra extension and energy in the top end, it doesn't sound brittle at all, no sharpness. I wouldn't necessarily call it a sparkly treble. It's not that energetic, but it just complements the mids and the bass beautifully. I think the engineers absolutely nailed the treble tuning on this one. And finally, the Soundstage and technicalities. Look, Soundstage is pretty impressive. Not necessarily for its scale, like it's not a particularly expansive soundstage, but it's got great realism and natural proportions. So it feels very natural, the space that you're in. It sort of places you within the music, not in front of it, like a lot of IEMs have a sort of a two-dimensional plane where all the music is squished into a line in front of you. This is sort of a more well-rounded area or space, combined with outstanding resolution. Like, think of those large high-end televisions that you see when you go in stores. They've usually got some demo going, and the colors are always vivid. They're very bright, but there's excellent contrast. There's good saturation. There's no smearing or bleeding between the colors or lines. That's kind of what the the resolution on the Martilo is like. It's just absolutely spot on. And then in terms of imaging, because of that great resolution and that excellent soundstage, imaging is also really good. So positional cues are very pinpoint, great for gaming, outstanding for music. And despite having that extra bass, the detail retrieval on these is still excellent. So look, I really don't have anything negative to say about the Punch Audio Martilo. It is probably, I'm pretty comfortable saying it is my favorite IEM around the $300 mark. In my opinion, it's much more technically proficient than the Moondrop Blessing 3. And I also prefer the tonal balance of this one over the Blessing 3. The Blessing 3 is still a great IEM, mind you, but this just sort of takes things up a notch in terms of resolution and tone. And try as I might, I can't really choose or pick anything that it does wrong. I'm just not the biggest fan of the font there, but hey, I'll deal with that. I'll get used to it, and if they keep making stuff this good, eventually I will love it. So obviously this one gets my highest recommendation. I'm going to slap it onto my best IEMs list on the website. If you haven't seen the website, check it out. There's a link in the description below, along with my affiliate links, of course. So if you want to know what my favorite $300-ish mark is as of this time, check these out. Possibly my most favorite IEM thus far in 2025. Having said that, I'm going to wrap it up there. So thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, Pa Family Audiophile style. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button before you go. And until next time, I'll see you later.